Welcome to the Truetone Lounge. I'm your host, Zach Childs. Today, we have one of the great Telecaster players of all time, our friend, Red Volkaert.
Hi.
Red was born in Canada.
Vancouver, Canada.
Yes, and then made his move, down further south, and then over to California, and then over to Nashville, and in around 90, and he joined the Don Kelly band, was part of that, of course, list of wonderful players that were part of his band.
Till I got there, yeah.
And then played with Merle Haggard, and that's a pretty coveted guitar chair. And then he moved to Austin, and you can see him, almost every night of the week, there, and just a treasure of honky-tonk guitar, and so proud to have you on the show. So thank you, Red.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So was it your dad that kind of influenced you to pick up the guitar in the first place?
I wouldn't say influence, more like forced, but I'm a middle child, so I got my brother's everything, clothes and his guitar.
Yeah.
And he had a guitar and that my dad gave him, and he plinked a little bit, and he said, nah, I want to play the drums. So he took up the drums, and within a year, my dad said, you should play guitar. It'd be great, And I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
So I said, because of the middle child issues, I said, I want to play the bass. And he already played, my dad played. So he said, I think if you play the guitar first, the bass might come easier, totally. And then if you were to switch it around, play the bass and then try to play guitar. I'm like, well, I'm not going to want to play guitar because that guitar's in the corner. I didn't say that. But so he said, no, I think you should start with the guitar first. So he set me up with a friend of his who was a teacher, a real teacher, and I took lessons for about 3 months, and then the teacher fired me because I wasn't learning to read. I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
So he calls my dad in one day and says, well, we got to talk. My dad says, oh, I got a genius on my hands. And he says, well, I don't know about that, but he said he's not learning to read. He's parroting everything that I show him. Mm-hmm. And he goes, like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I would show him, like Alfred's guitar course. One of the first songs was Au Clair de la Lune. It's Canadian. And, can, things like that. So he said I would show him reading it in the book and going.
Yeah.
And I would remember what he did, watch what he did, and pretend to read in the book. And Dad says, well, how do you know he's not reading? He said, well, he dropped this pick, and when we went to pick it up, I turned the page, and he came back and played the same thing. So that's kind of where we're at. So by then, of course, my dad's smoking mad because he spent $2.50 on a lesson for like 3 months, once a week. So he was mad and said, well, what do you suggest? He said, well, obviously he's got a pretty good ear and a good memory, so just let him play guitar if he wants to play guitar. So okay. So it got really quiet on the way home and all of that. And so that from then on, I just did it, playing with the neighbors' kids and got into playing that way and, sitting around and, being a rock guy at home. And my brother was playing the drums by then. So we had our own power duo and rocked the basement of our home in Vancouver, Canada. And till we started playing some sock hops, like lunch parties at high school.
You wanted to be a rock player.
Well, like all kids, of course.
Yeah. And you loved Ritchie Blackmore and the bands that were of that era.
Of that era, totally.
And so, when did country music become and Western swing and all these? When did that become more palatable and something that was more interesting to you?
Probably when I was about 13, I guess. My parents had a pretty good record collection, and like my mom had Ella Fitzgerald and Les Paul and Mary Ford and Jimmy Bryant. She had a Jimmy Bryant 10-inch EP
Wow.
Jimmy Bryant, Speedy West. So I'd heard that a lot. And my dad had Jimmy Reed and Albert King, B.B. King, those kind of guys. He had some Waylon early records, and Merle and Buck Owens and Ray Price. And they would have parties at the house with another couple or two on the weekends and move all the furniture, and the hi-fi would play Ray Price and Buck Owens all night.
Yeah.
So I heard that through osmosis, I guess, while I slept as a boy. And so I heard all that stuff, and, it was like, oh, it's okay. It's Dad's music,
Yeah.
And then I wound up, my dad introduced me to some pool playing buddies of his that played music, and they needed a guitar player to play in their little weekend band, doing the Legions and stuff like that. So my dad says, my boy plays, you ought to hear him play. Hey, get up. Middle of the night, sit down and play for these guys. So I'll sit down and I'd play some country stuff, and I, do my... that kind of stuff, and they're like, all right, you got a gig. So I had a gig with these guys playing weekends, and they played, like, I called it the Antler Tour, where they played Elks and Moose Lodge and anything with horns on it. It seemed like they had a club for those sort of guys, and the Vets and Legions and all those kind of things. So they had weekend work all the time. They said, great, we'll do it. And he said, well, he doesn't drive yet, so you have to come get him. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So I did that for a couple of years, and then, of course, they played old country stuff, Jim Reeves and Hank Williams and Hank Thompson, and just all their era of stuff with the old guy music, and which I love more now.
Yeah.
But so that kind of got me started on the country stuff. So I thought, okay, these guys pay money. Our little rock band doesn't pay anything, and I could buy another guitar with that money, another amp maybe. So I'm thinking. So I get out all my parents' country stuff, and I start woodshedding with that, and pretty soon I'm, kind of stuff. And so playing back then, they played instrumentals a fair bit, they even played them on the radio during and before the Farm Report. They would say, it would be a Troubadour's instrumental playing Red Top or some kind of, kind of instrumentals. And now here's the Farm Report. So lots of instrumentals were going back in the 60s and 70s. So it was fun to learn those things, and I really got into that. And the more I got into it, the more I got into it. So that kind of was the bug that bit me and made me go, man, I just love this stuff. I don't know why. Maybe it was from my parents listening and dancing to it as a kid and hearing that, and then trying to play it and go, I guess I'm not so dumb after all. I kind of learned how to do that, sort of,
So it wasn't like that you heard some country album and you were in love. It was a process of you kind of learning the songs, and slowly you kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah. I guess it's that kind of like, shacking up with a girl. Same kind of deal,
Yeah. You keep playing, and then you end up moving to Edmonton, Alberta, for gigs. You play there. And then what is it that caused you to make the big leap to go to California, to, go to the States?
Well, I lived in Alberta, and that's where I played professionally 6 nights a week for, I don't know, probably 10 years, I guess. And I played in a bunch of great bands and learned a lot. And I kind of got to the point of realizing that, not that I was going to do anything, I'm just a dumbass guitar player, but I was looking at it like, what's my biggest goal? I could play for this guy or that guy who's the big stuff in Canada at the time, but there again, like all commercial music, it wasn't the stuff I wanted to do because there wasn't much guitar playing in it. And so it was a combination between that and the way that, to me, I don't know if it's all countries, but I kind of got a feeling that it's all other countries other than here, though it may be here too. What I kind of felt like I ran into was most people's judge of a good player was a guy that can sound like somebody. So up there it was like that. Oh, you ought to hear this guy. He sounds just like, Roy Clark, or he sounds just like, pick a name, at the time, whoever's the hot stuff of the day kind of thing, So it was kind of like, man, what about that guy that lives over there that I know? And he plays like better than all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, nobody cares. He never had any crowds. He couldn't get anybody. Bunch of great thumb-picking Chet Atkins style players in Canada that go unnoticed. Bunch of good jazz guys, you know, that are in all these little towns that I was traveling around playing, thinking none of these guys getting any notoriety and nothing's going on for them. And they have to, if they want to play in a band, they got to play in a cover band and copy some commercial schlock that they probably hate, just so they can work and play money and say that I'm making music.
Yeah.
So that kind of soured me a bit, and I thought, man, it's got to be better in the States. Yeah. All these great guys are down there, Leon Rhodes and Buddy Emmons and all these guys playing down there, and they invent all this stuff that I'm trying to steal and learn. So I think I want to go down there, and I don't care if I get a gig playing. I want to go watch those guys play and see if what I've stolen is in the right. If he's doing red top, if Leon's playing red top and he ends it with, I want to know if he's doing it there. So if I get to see him do that, then I can go home and I'll be good.
Yeah.
That was my thought, you know. So being from Vancouver, I thought, oh, I'll stop and see my mom first, because if I get killed while I'm in the States,
yeah, which
at
is
least
likely.
I said it's likely.
Yeah.
So, because there's a lot of crime on TV, you know, the cop shows and stuff. So I said bye to her in case that happened. So I had a Telecaster, an old Esquire that I put a Strat pickup in the middle and another Tele pickup in. And I packed up my stuff, and I had sold a bunch of stuff and bought a new pickup truck, a little Nissan. I had a canopy on it, and I built a little bed so I could sleep in it. I took, 2 black dress pants for playing gigs in case I get one or I go out somewhere. And I had my jeans and 5 shirts and a Telecaster and a Super Reverb, and I hit the road.
You were ready.
Yeah. So I figured I'm going to go down, but being on the West Coast, I'm going to stop in California and kind of piddle my way across and eventually go to Nashville, go to the Opry and watch Leon Rhodes and Buddy Emmons and all that stuff. So that's what I ended up doing, and kind of dinking my way down that way and stopping along the way and playing, and been lucky that way. I've been playing since I came down. You know?
You moved to California in '86. And that was an interesting, country scene, in the Los Angeles
wonderful.
area. So there was Pete Anderson, and you had
Jim Lauderdale was substituting for Dwight Yoakam as a substitute singer before they go out on the road and do a tour. Dwight didn't want to sing at the rehearsals, so he would send Lauderdale, because he was living there and broke at the time, and they were best buddies anyway. So I'll do that. And so he'd slip him a bit of dough and rent money or whatever, so he could do that, and just that kind of stuff was going on. It was so cool back then,
Well, also you had John Jorgensen.
Oh yeah,
and John, I sent John an email and I said that I was interviewing you, and he said, ask Red to tell you about the first gig that we did together at Rawhide's. So what happened?
Well, there was this gal who's a wonderful singer out there, Kathy Robertson. She's a really good country rockabilly singer. Great gal, great band leader, hustler, could get work everywhere and anywhere. She had a steady gig at this place in North Hollywood called the Rawhide, and it was a gay bar. The bathroom said them and you. So this was in the middle 80s. So it wasn't quite as open as it is today, kind of thing, but whatever, it was, so we would do this gig, and she always had 2 guitar players and a steel player, bass and drums.
Okay.
So the guitar players was either John, Jerry Donahue, Will Ray, Jeff Ross, or me. So we all played together, 2 of us at a time, lots, every Monday night for several years down there. And a fellow named Doug Livingston was a steel guitar player. Fantastic. He was Donna Summer's band leader on the piano, and Jose Feliciano's for a long time, too. And he's like a Oscar Peterson wizard guy. So he took up the steel guitar. Most of the time his feet were hanging out the end, and he didn't use pedals, but he sounded like Emmons, Just unbelievable player. So it was always a fun band playing, and we played at this place called the Rawhide, and of course we had all kinds of fun with it. They had a magazine rack that had some of the weirdest stuff you've ever seen. That was for sale or grab or whatever. And it was an interesting gig, but musically, wow. It was great. And of course, she did all the Stand By Your Man kind of songs. And so the tips were unbelievable. It was just a perfect gig and a great time. And we became fast friends through that gig.
Yeah.
You know.
Part of that, that scene, of course, I think there might have been hopes of like meeting like Merle Haggard or Buck or someone like that while you were there. Did you get to meet them?
Before that, yeah, the first place I stopped coming from Washington State was in Redding, California,
Right,
where Merle lived.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll see him at the Kroger, or with the grocery store there. Of course, he's on the road traveling all the time. I didn't see him anywhere. So I went to this club in town there called the Saddlehorn, and on a Sunday night, there was a jam session. So I went to this jam session. You sign up, they call you up, play a couple songs. Get up and I play a couple songs, and the guy in the crowd, hey, you looking for work? And I said, maybe. What do you got? He said, well, start here tomorrow night, 6 nights a week for a month. Cool. Huh? I'll pay you $300 a week. That's enough to get out of town on. I'll do that. Sure.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I kind of then worked my way down to L.A., and I wound up, after that, I went to San Jose, and I got a house gig at a club, place called Cowtown in San Jose that used to be Sam's, and I believe the song Sam's Place was written about that.
The Buck tune, yeah.
And Bobby Black was the steel guitar player in the house band then, so it was like, hell yeah, I'll take that gig. So I did that for 6-8 months, and then I went to Santa Cruz and played down there for a while, then went to L.A.,
Yeah.
And but of course I thought I'd see Merle in Redding, and it was gone, wasn't on the road, so never ran into him at all. And I saw him up in Canada at concerts and dreamt about, boy, I'd love to have that Roy Nichols chair, kind of thing.
Did you get to meet Roy or any of the strangers or anything
Not
like
back
that?
then, no, not until I'd moved to Nashville here.
Okay, so you moved to Nashville in '90 and you were hungry.
Actually, I was going to leave town. I was almost out of money. I couldn't find any gigs. I got some gigs in Arkansas when I moved here, driving back to Arkansas on the weekends to play. And just worked out that Don Kelly was at a place called the Stagecoach and was needing a guitar player. He had some trouble with a guy just before me, and he had to kind of leave in a hurry and go back to Louisiana. So I had been subbing 2 or 3 gigs. So Don says, hey, you want this gig? Hell yeah. So I was there 6 nights with Don, and the 7th night was a dark night, they called it, but there was another band, a different band playing. So I played with that band too, and played 7 nights a week there for about 3 years. And then Clinton Gregory was a fiddle player in that band.
Right.
He got a record deal on Step One, and we went on the road for, 2 or 3 years doing that.
I'm curious with Don Kelly, because of all the guitar players that have played with him, and I've seen some of them, living here for the past 20 years, I've been able to see some of them kind of go through the Don Kelly school and see how they changed and such.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, because I didn't get here early enough to really see you that much in the Don Kelly thing. How much did just the gig itself change you, and how much did Don Kelly's direction as a band leader change you as a player?
I still believe he's the best band leader that I've ever played with, because he's a great guy, and of course he's a guitar nut himself. So we have so much. Him and guitar players have so much in common. If he's not playing, he's looking for guitars in pawn shops. He's just that kind of guy. So we went every day. We had mapped out in the town. We'd go to the east side one day, the west side another part, south side each day. And so we'd hit canvas them all the time for 11 years I was here. Yeah. We did that all the time, and so we got along great, and he was into cars too and stuff. But as a band leader, he was so cool and easygoing, and Buddy would bust you because he just knew from all the other great players that he had. If you were overdoing something or stepping on somebody singing or something, you'd hear, hey, while you're in the middle of your hot, ripping solo, you'd hear, hey, just over on the side. And it was like a dad yell.
Yeah.
And it was like, stop.
Yeah.
Quit that shit.
Yeah.
So it was a learning thing. And blunt as it was, man, it worked and it helped. Because he was older than the guys that worked for him, and he had a job for 1,000 years in every place he's been. So, out of respect to a guy that works that much, and there's obviously a reason that he's there that long. So you go, okay, I'll listen to that guy. He's got something very valuable. And every time you go see him, he's always got some holy cow guitar player with him. And there's a reason for that, you know, kind of. So for me, I was that, man, I'm a lucky bugger to get in something like that, to weasel in under the wire and land that gig and have him yell at me. And, you know, he was in a nice way always, though. If there was guys at the end of the gig, you'd have a couple guitar players gather around at the end of your gig and you're packing your stuff, and he'd come with your money and he'd hand you your money in front of everybody every time. He'd say, here, go buy you a tone, and walk away. And, of course, the guys that didn't know him would go, that's your boss? You go, yeah. You know, I'm proud.
Yeah.
But knowing him, it's like, that's so him.
Yeah.
And until those guys knew him, they thought, man, what a grouchy, mean guy. Yeah. But he's not at all.
Yeah, but he'd come over with your money and say, go buy a tone.
Go buy a tone. Go buy your tone, boy. And he'd walk away. So everybody's mouth would drop, you know, and it's like, he's telling you to get a tone, you know.
Who are some of the guitar players that came and saw you play? Because, you know, because people would come to town and come to see.
Oh, lots of guys that, you know, I don't know who all, but a lot of them over the years. You know, I was there. I guess I was there, I don't know, 3 years or something like that, I think. So there was a lot of people come through, bands and stuff too. And, of course, we had a jam session Monday night. So everybody in the band, the goal was to get off stage. So,
so
you want to get up and play?
Yeah.
Outside smoking cigarettes, you know.
Having a beer or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hitting on girls, whatever, that kind of stuff.
So he kind of helped you kind of, maybe playing commercial isn't the exact right word to use, but he kind of helped you kind of reel in your playing.
Harness, exactly.
To harness your energy, and also he was, you know, what else was he?
About tone and stuff too. I'd try amps all the time, and just, you know, he'd be like, nah, that thing sounds like shit, get rid of it. And I'd be like, I just bought it. Yeah. You know, I'm at that point, I'm like a dumb kid. I mean, I just bought it. Why would I get rid of it?
Yeah.
I don't care that sounds bad. I just got it.
Yeah.
But he was more about, no, it doesn't sound good. Get rid of it.
So what kind of sound did Don Kelly want?
He had an old homemade rig that was a blackface Showman head with a D130 JBL in it. No reverb, nothing, and sounded unbelievable good. Yeah. All the time.
And is that the sound that he wanted from his guitar players?
No, he wanted you to have your own sound.
Okay.
And hopefully it was better than his. Yeah. He was that kind of guy, really giving. Because, I mean, he'd have a guitar on all night, but he didn't take, in a 9 to 2, he would take maybe 8 solos in a night. The rest was yours, you know? So he was all about, you play good, keep going, take another one.
Yeah.
But it would be like, he would always encourage you to play different stuff each solo. So I got to thinking like, okay, I'm going to play, this is a Buck Owens thing, so I'll play a Buck Owens or Don Rich kind of solo in it. Mm-hmm. So he'd go, oh, that's great, go again. And then the night he'd go, you played 3 Don Rich solos in a row. Why would you do that?
Aha.
Ding!
Yeah.
So I start thinking, okay, if I get 3 solos, I should play a Don Rich and maybe a Roy Nichols and a James Burton.
Yeah.
And then as time would go on, he'd be like, yeah, it's all that skinny string stuff. Don't you know any melodies or chords? Ding.
Yeah.
Painful ding. You go, okay, well, maybe I'll play a Chet Atkins-y sort of bad without a thumb pick solo in the middle of those 2 solos. So I ended up getting into that where I would think, okay, it really doesn't matter what the song is.
Yeah.
If he's giving me 3 solos, it's not about the lyric and the message anymore when everybody's on the dance floor dancing and drinking and grabbing butts and all that.
Yeah.
It's about a band having fun and playing and the people dancing and the energy's up, and part of your energy up is playing different fun things that makes the band perk up and the people react to that. So that was all part of that. And he just knew all that stuff, you know?
That's fantastic because, your tendency would be, okay, I'm going to play Working Man Blues.
I'm going to play this solo off the record,
exactly.
And then another one what's kind of like it.
You're going to kind of continue to play kind of in a James Burton kind of vein. Or Roy Nichols.
Of course, because it fits that song.
Yeah, but you wouldn't think about, I need to keep this
interesting. What would Hank Garland do in that song?
Yeah.
you know.
all these different guitar players. And
Right, and this town's full of those guys, so
Yeah.
you could just think, okay, Jimmy Cap, Spider Wilson, pick your name, you know. How did those guys play? I don't know how they played, but it kind of was like this, and I would emulate a horrible, probably, version, but nonetheless, at least I was trying, and he dug that, and he like, come on, that's great, go again, do another one. He's that kind of guy. So in that way, for a guitar nerd, that's the best boss a guy could have.
Yeah.
You know,
because you're playing a lot, and he's giving
7 nights, so 6 nights with him a week, all the time.
Did that wear you out?
Hell no! I was playing downtown doing duos during the day, just so I could warm up and try and think of new shit to make him happy. You know, because it was exciting. Yeah. So like I say, for a guitar nerd, it was for me like hog heaven.
Yeah. So were you more motivated by trying to keep Don Kelly, excited, or the audience, or both, or
all of it? Yeah, definitely, because I was starting to see his pattern, or whatever you call that, of being a band leader. The main thing is those people drinking, ringing that cash register, and the dance floor full, and doing long sets. So if you take a break, they're going to go to another club.
Exactly.
So that started the whole downtown thing here, where bands don't take a break. I want to blame Don Kelly for that.
Yeah.
You know, because when you take a break, they go this is great, we've enjoyed it. I heard so-and-so's playing over at this place. Let's go over there for a beer.
Exactly.
Where if you keep them there, they're going to forget about it, hopefully, because it's going, man, this is great. Yeah. We'll have to go tomorrow. It's too late.
Yeah, because who cares if you have to play 2 hours straight? You're gonna make more tips. You're gonna make more money.
Exactly. Yeah. The bar makes more money. You keep your job longer. Back then, we didn't have, if they paid a cover, there was no tip jar. You know, so back at Stagecoach, we didn't make any tips. It was just a flat pay. But the bar, if the bar was down that week, they'd bitch like hell to them. Or if it was up, it'd be, hey, Don, we sure had a great week last week. Okay. I don't know that he got a raise or not, because we didn't, but I doubt that he did either. It was a club. They're club owners, Yeah. They're going to try and cut his throat if they can. That's their gig, But anyway, I started seeing that as a thing, learning from that's how and why he did what he did. It was not only to help a young guitar player think about being a better player and trying different stuff. The purpose of that really was the energy level in the band, so it had more energy, and maybe the piano player would go, I got to play a better solo next, so everybody's not louder or faster or nothing, but just cooler stuff and fitting in better and making the band groove better. And your rhythm playing, what are you doing when you're not playing a hot rod solo? Most guys just stand there with their pick in their hand, So how about playing rhythm really good?
Yeah. So
that became a whole nother thing for me. In a bigger band, if we got 2 guitar players and a steel player and a fiddle player, I'm only going to play 1/5 of what's going on in there. So what can I do to help this thing instead of just standing there waiting for my turn to show off? What can I do to help? Yeah. So you playing a solo, and I'm playing, and it's a shuffle, and I'm playing the rhythm behind your solo. I might be going... Next guy's turn. I don't want to do the same thing and make him think of what you just did because of my groove. If my groove can help the next guy think of something different, I might think your solo gets... Next guy's solo gets... Like that. And then the next guy's solo, make it swing a bit. Yeah. What are you going to play over that? That kind of a thing, So I started help me with that, thinking about the rhythm aspect of being in a bigger situation band. A lot of bands that I would see at that time, maybe they're all great and they all do that now. I don't know, but back then it didn't seem like a lot of guys would play much rhythm unless they were assigned a rhythm job as an acoustic player. Right. Electric Tele guys were just like steel players that put their hand on their lap or on the steel and wait till they get to play a big hot rod solo and save the world, So to me, it was like, well, why not help that guy and have him dependent on your whatever you're doing that's going to help him. So if you all of a sudden are playing a great rhythm and there's a good bed for you to play a solo over, aren't you really going to want to play something cool?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I'm doing some other gigs with other bands and some showcases at that time. And all of a sudden, I'm getting some gigs, I think maybe a bit more for my rhythm playing than my lead playing, because it's a big ensemble setup, over a bunch of players. And they're all playing together, but I'm playing lots of rhythm on these things. So I'm starting to wonder, okay, is that maybe why? Because I see these other showcases, the bands before and after, nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
So, maybe there's a catch to that. If you're playing a 2-beat rhythm, there's 5 different rhythms you can play to that, that guys can solo over. So Don helped me start to think about that kind of stuff too.
Because in the night, unless you're in the Don Kelly band, you're going to be playing rhythm a lot more than you're going to be playing lead.
In most bands. Oh,
Yeah.
Totally. So why not work on that? Your timing, your groove between the bass and the drums, you got to fit in there somehow. And maybe if they're lopsided one way, you need to be the guy that's going to balance it out. Even if it stays that way, you need to stay in the center of that, half cocked to make it all groove, So that's part of your job as a rhythm guy. And I think that's equally as important as being a hot rod, look at me play kind of playing triplets all night,
Yeah. So how long had you dreamed of playing for Merle Haggard?
Probably since I was about 12 or 13, I guess, and I saw him play a couple of times. I was like, wow, that's the music. And I'd sit as a kid and learn, try and play all the, that kind of stuff. And, the whole, just hearing that sound, because I listened to those records all my life, and tried to learn all that stuff note for note that I could. And I used to everything, those things and all that, working on all that stuff as a kid and trying to figure all that out. It was just like, wow, it's great stuff, and get to see him. And man, wouldn't it be nice to be able to even just jam with those guys once? Because I know some of those things, and it never thought it would ever happen.
So you saw Merle a couple of times.
Yeah.
As a kid, and
in Canada,
with Roy still playing.
Yeah, and Eldon Shamblin and Tiny Moore and all that. It was like, oh my God, because that was the Bob Wills tribute. To Bob Wills was my my teething of Western swing stuff. I was like, oh, they played with Bob Wills. So I went down to our Woolworths, and there was a record, Bob Wills. Oh, there's one. Yeah. And I bought one, and it was like, kind of corny. You can't hear the bass or drums, but man, the picking's great on it. So I'd sit and I'd try and learn that, that roly-poly stuff. Those kind of things, and so the hook went in for that. Yeah. So I've been a gomer for that stuff since I was a kid, Yeah.
And so when you saw Roy, was he still playing a Tele and using a
No, he was playing a Les Paul by then. He had a Sunburst deluxe Les Paul with the mini humbuckers. Yeah. But it was still Roy, so it didn't matter. To me, it was like, it didn't sound the same, that Tele snappy, barky thing. Right. But his playing was still so Roy and Django-y that it was like, wow, he shouldn't be allowed to play country, but he's getting away with it. Kind of guy. So to see that was just great. And then later on, he played a PV, and it was like tone. And then I thought, well, he's getting old. Let him go. That way. Yeah. Because by then I was such a Telecaster twin JBL homo kind of guy that nothing sounded that good to me, and it was like, he should be doing that too. What's wrong with him?
He's the guy that
started. Why would you change horses midstream? You're not done yet.
It's and kind of going down the Roy Nichols rabbit trail. There's this Capitol put out this like country music fandango. I can't remember what it was called, but he plays a tune called Silver Bells on it. That's just great. And it's this live record with Buck and and Roy's part of the staff band that's playing. And,
that was a Cousin Herb Henson live.
That's what it is. Yes,
album.
I have
that came out, and Herb died just after that. But he played Silver Bells on that. And it's just unbelievable.
And his playing, before Merle, was so interesting.
Yeah,
and
with Rose Maddox was great.
Yeah. And you kind of come up through that, and then you get how his playing changed because of the work that Phil Baugh and James Burton were doing, and all this, and that Merle Haggard guitar. Yeah. So instead of me yammering on, like the Merle Haggard guitar style that we think of, like it seems like it's a mix of all these guys together. I mean, what kind of made
there's another guy nobody talks about is Al Bruno.
Yeah.
It's amazing that he played on the live, or not the live, he played on one of the instrumental albums. You can hear him playing gut string, and he played on the White Hag album. He played on several albums, and amazing guitar player. Phil Baugh played on a bunch of stuff, of course, Roy and James Burton. So those four guys, I think all of them contributed crazy to that sound.
Yeah.
And you can't just say, it was all Roy Nichols or it was all James Burton. He played the lead on the first two albums, and then Roy took over from there. But to me, after that, no offense, I love James Burton thing, but I like Roy Nichols' thing better because it's thicker and greasier, and he would sneak in some little jazzier things that nobody else, country guys, would think of, and it somehow worked. So that's what sold me on his deal more so. But I think as time went on, he took a bunch of those Phil Baugh and James Burton things, and then added his own spin to that, which was a jazzier, swingier kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But mixed the two together, and that's kind of, as time went on, it became more and more Roy's thing. But I think earlier on it might have been a mix of all those guys, and him hearing them and them hearing him and all that, and the recording together, that it just like friends, stuff rubs off.
Yeah. So it's kind of like listening to the studio version of Working Man Blues with James, and then you hear the live version with Roy, and the tone is so much bigger, and it's
his sound, and it's like it or not, it's a different sound.
Yeah.
There's probably 50% guys that go, James Burton tone, 50% Roy Nichols tone. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They're both awesome and they're great.
Yeah. What again, because I'm sure you've gone down the Roy Nichols, rabbit hole. How did he get his sound? I mean,
well, I wasn't there at the end of the bed watching him do it, but from what I can gather and from worming information out of Norm, the steel player, and Biff, the drummer, and Bonnie and Merle and everybody, I wore those guys out. I gurmed them to death while I was on the gig, trying to find out all the dirt I could on everything and everybody and Roy's tone and all that stuff. And I got probably the most out of Norm because he sat beside him, and they were buddies and roommates and blah, blah. So, he said, twin JBLs, lots of volume, and old Teles. He always had early, like 52, 3, 4, 5 Teles. Yeah. And then he got some 60s ones that he even put black guards on them, that kind of thing. And he had an early 52 that he'd put a white guard on and then put a Charlie Christian in, and another one had a P90 in it. Yeah. But the bridge pickup was still an old 50s pickup with, most of their stuff was probably the Silverface era. Yeah. And a bunch of the recording in that was the drip edge amps on a lot of that stuff. And then they went to Music Man's, which had Eminence speakers, which you think compared to JBL's shouldn't sound good, but they made them work. They sounded great through them. Tiny Moore sounded good through his, sort of gimbal back then,
Yeah.
So, but to me, the sound that I think of is a, 67 or 68 drip edge twin, a real one, not a reissue, with D120s and an early 50s Tele on the bridge pickup or an Esquire, you know.
Did he roll the tone control down, you think?
I don't think he did, but I do think, and I have heard, that he dined his amps like full blast and turned way down.
Okay.
And that gives, of course, when when you're up full, then you turn down a little bit, darker.
Yeah.
So by him turning down to there, a lot darker sounding.
Yeah.
So I think maybe with that, I'd heard that. I hadn't seen that, or I can't say that that was the truth, but I've read that, heard that, and talked to different guys that say they saw that, and that's what they thought that he did, was he'd crank the amp and bring the guitar down and play if he needed a bit more. And if the band's real loud, he had the power there to do it with, you know.
Right. Okay. So now that we've gone down the Roy, the Roy rabbit trail, now so you get called. So, and also just to preface this, Merle had after Roy had Clint Strong and Joe Manuel, who are great players,
amazing,
but they didn't really play in the vein of Roy. And so when you kind of got on the gig, were a lot of the arrangements different and such? Were you kind of trying to move things back to kind of the way that Roy played on the gig, or trying to honor that?
To me, it was like respecting your dad kind of thing. I mean, I got the job with this guy, Merle Haggard, so to me it was like, that's a certain sound, and I respect those other guys and their playing and everything. Holy shit players, all of them. But all the songs that he's playing for his audiences are the old ones, so I should maybe at the least tip my hat to the original stuff, which I knew lots of, and a bunch of those bits and solos and fills and things like that. So whenever he would do an original older tune, I would totally rip the solo. And of course he would giggle like crazy. He'd love it, So, I mean, he even said, and I think in a Guitar Player magazine, or at some point about a year after I was in the band, he said that he thought that I was the closest thing he'd ever heard to Roy in an article. So I paid him until he died. But so it was like, I guess that paid off in that way.
Yeah.
And to back up, when I got the gig, I was living here in town, and he calls me on the phone.
Merle did himself.
Yeah. But his band had been coming. I was playing at Skull's Rainbow Room in Printer's Alley.
Yeah.
Doing a trio 6 nights a week. We did like 10:45 till 2:45. 6 nights a week. Merle would come to town. They'd do Nashville Now and these different shows and stuff. And of course, all of those shows, they'd tape at 5 o'clock or 5:30. So they'd be done by 8:30 or 9. So the band would scatter and hit town before they left the next morning. And a bunch of them would always come to the alley and hang out. Clint would come down a lot, and a bunch of band guys, and jam, and we'd play stuff all night long, doing old country tunes and Merle tunes and swing stuff, because Clint loved swing stuff. So we did lots more swing when he'd show up. And so anyway, knowing some of those guys through that, I guess Merle had asked them, and Joe said, who do you guys think we should get? Because Joe was leaving at that time to go with Leanne Womack. Mm-hmm. And he got really good job, was a band leader slot, so he got extra loot, I guess, for that, and whatever. So the 5 out of 8 of them said my name.
Yeah.
So I spent the next couple of years getting even with those other 3. But so anyway, he calls me up on the phone, and I said, hello? And he says, this Red Volkaert? And I said, yeah. He said, this is Merle Haggard. And it sounded like him, but I said, Murph, you fucker. Can I say that on here?
You just did.
Okay. My buddy Jim Murphy's a steel guitar player.
Yeah.
Was a fantastic everything, but he was a shit-stirring, sneaky, funny, kind of mean a little bit kind of guy. And it was like something he would do.
Yeah.
And then so I said, Murph, you fucker. And he goes, no. My name's Merle Haggard. I'm a singer. And Murph wouldn't do that. Maybe it is him. I said, okay. Like, I still kind of didn't buy it.
Yeah.
He said, I got your number from Joe Manuel and Norm Hamlet. And I was like, well, I got scared then. I said, okay. He said, well, I'm looking for guitar players. Wondering if you'd be interested in the job. And I waited for about a 30th of a second. I said, sure. And he says, oh, great. He said, when can you start? And I said, well, what do you got going? He said, well, we got a tour coming up here in a couple of weeks. Can you start on that? I said, hell yeah, I'll do it. I was playing downtown. I could sub out all my jobs.
Yeah.
And Don said, hell yeah, go ahead and do it. So Johnny Hyland filled in for me because the turf had blown down at that point and he was out of a job.
Right.
So he started filling in for me. After a while, I had the Merle gig. So I just said to Don, why don't you just keep Johnny and I'll be his sub when I'm home?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was fine, and he kept Johnny, and that's where Johnny got his deal going. So he says, yeah, okay, well, we'll start in a couple of weeks. I said, well, let me ask you this. Could you send me maybe some tapes or CDs of you guys' stuff? Because, I know a bunch of your old things, and I know how you guys, when you play live from YouTube, that your arrangements are different than the originals. You stretch them out, you shorten some up, and little horn things are different with the sax and the steel and the guitar. If I could have a couple of tapes or CDs, I could work on that stuff in the next 2 weeks and have it down to be ready to play. And he says, just come and play with us. I said, you're on, okay, my kind of guy.
Yeah.
So that was it. That was the deal. So I got the gig, and then, of course, about 3 weeks later, Norm Hamlet is a band leader. I said, Norm, what's the deal on this gig? He said, I said, do I have the gig or am I going home? He said, long as you make them laugh, you got the gig. So it was like, oh, okay. So we'd be playing and I'd play a solo and he'd do, Every Fool is a Rainbow, and I'd start my solo. Of course, he'd be laughing his ass off at that. So I thought, he likes the Roy Nichol kind of solos. So that kind of made the tip of the hat thing mean more.
Exactly.
Because he was digging that, and
because I was his friend.
Right. They were, best buddies forever. So, he was missing them, I'm sure, and all of that. So if I could give him a little bit of that, that's a good thing,
Yeah.
So it was all good and everything. And so, being like a new kid in the group for a while, it was like, go again, go again, go again. And I thought, man, the band's going to hate my ass because I'm getting all these repeat solos.
Yeah.
And of course, thinking back to my Don Kelly lessons, I'm thinking, okay, he's saying go again. I need to play something a little feistier than the stock thing. So, depending on the tune or whatever, I would put something in that was a little beefier or a little weirder or a little extra. Mm-hmm. So, and then go again. I was like, man, you're pushing it here. I'm thinking, I don't want to get too weird and scare them off and have them run me off because I'm not sticking to the program.
Yeah.
But shit, he loved, because he's such a guitar nut himself, it couldn't be weird enough for him. He just laughed and loved it. So it was so cool. And so through that, we became really good friends. And the bus would break down. It'd be me and him and go for a walk. And we'd talk about guitars and pickups. He was all about sound. That guy could hear a gnat fart. I swear. He was like unbelievable ears. When the Merle Haggard model Tele came out, he was in California, and it was during the summer NAMM, and Fender wanted to give him the guitar, but he wasn't here. So I went and picked it up for him. So he already had number 1 and I think number 2 of those guitars. So I picked up number 5 from him here. So we get back on the road. I bring it with me with my old one, and I said, here's that guitar from the NAMM thing that Fender presented to you, and I accepted it. He said, you like that thing? I said, oh, it's real light. You just try it, see if you like it. I said, you're kidding? He said, no, take it, it's yours. What? So I had number 5 guitar.
Wow.
So I play it for a while, and of course I can't leave nothing alone. I put an old set of 70s single coil Bardens in the thing between tours. We go out first night, first solo, playing some solo, not even thinking about it. And he comes over and he goes, "What'd you do with that guitar?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It sounds way different." I said, "Worse?" He goes, "No." Like that. I was like, I changed the pickups in it. Kind of like I thought he was going to yell at me for jacking with a gift.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Man, that sounds good. What are those? I want some of those." Joe wouldn't make them anymore because he'd make this double blade ones, you know.
Right.
And these were the old single ones from the 70s. So I tried to get a hold of Joe, and he's like, "No, I don't make those anymore. They're inferior. My new ones are better," and this and that, blah, blah, you know, 0.9-10 Mach 4, the frequency response. And okay, but I still like the old ones. Could you make some? I guarantee you I could sell about 10 sets. No, I'm not going to do that. They're inferior.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to another guy, Jake Jones Pickups up in Connecticut, I think, something like that up there. I think he's kind of out of business now, but he copied them exact, sounded great. So I put a set in Merle's, and they were there, and they're still in it.
Yeah.
So he just flipped it, but he's like really about sound, and you know, and like when I got the gig, he said, "You got to have 2 amps." I was like, "Well, why? I only need 1."
Yeah.
You know, and he said, "No, I want everybody to have 2 amps. You only mic 1, and but I want a big sound on stage." Like, okay, boss. You know, so 2 amps from then on, and it was awesome. How good can it get? You know,
Who tells you to play through 2 amps? When I saw you play in probably around 2000 in Corpus Christi, Texas, and you were playing the signature model with the single blade pickups, and you had 2 dual professional, custom shop amps with JBLs
E120s in them.
Yeah.
Nobody. Well, we had road crew, so I didn't have to carry them.
Right, because those things were.
Oh, they were weighed as much as a TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew.
That's so neat to hear that, that Merle was that into the guitar, and he was hearing all these things, and that he would laugh when you kind of made these nods to Roy and kind of the past. What were some other things you learned from Merle, like in the studio or on stage, or?
Just how he ran a band. I mean, I think he was obviously Merle Haggard. So to me, he was a genius about a lot of those kind of things with the music end of it, as a writer, as a singer, all that kind of stuff. But as a band leader, same kind of thing, I think, as Don Kelly in some ways, that maybe a bit more subtle. But if we were playing somewhere and they had the bass bins cranked on 11 out front, he would back away, keep backing away from the mic, so they'd have to keep turning his mic up until it would feed back. Mm-hmm. And he'd just keep backing away and backing away. And then finally these sound guys are at a loss because it's like there's no voice and he's too far away.
Yeah.
So back in the monitors, the fullback would come, "Hey, what's going on up there? I can't get you out front in the mic." And he would say it right in front of the crowd. "Turn them bass bins down. I told you to turn them down. It's rumbling up here and it's roaring and I can't sing in tune."
Yeah.
And the crowd would be like, "Oh." And of course the guy's like, "Oh, shit in his pants," because the whole, however many thousand people are there, or turn around and look at the mixer board in the middle of the room.
Exactly.
That guy's going to go, "Okay."
Yeah, I'm going to turn the bass down.
So the mix was always great, was always right. And that was his way of doing that. He would ask them at sound check. Yeah. But of course, half of those guys are drummers or bass players that are out of work. So all they want to hear is the bottom end on those PAs, Yeah. So they'd crank them up again for the night thing. And that was how he'd fix them. Little things like that is like, how cool can you do that?
Yeah.
In front of a bunch of people. That's the last time that guy will do that to Merle Haggard.
Yeah.
Just those kind of things. And then in the studio, he was real slick the same kind of way as you'd be playing. He would never say anything about what to do or what to play unless it was like kind of out of line or whatever. And then he might say, "Nah, maybe something a little bit simpler." And then he'd look at somebody else and say to them, like somebody he knew longer, like not me, he would look at Norm and say something like, maybe a little closer to the melody. It's like, pow, in the face, Doesn't get any more blunt than that. So, but it was so cool the way that he did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't embarrassing,
Yeah.
and it wasn't singling you out and, hey, stop, somebody needs a lesson here. It was none of that.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff, and he would ask, he'd say, oh, what do you guys think? Is that tempo right, or is it a bit slow? He'd always ask the guys' opinions and stuff, and, most of the guys would be, it's fine by me, because he's the one that has to be comfortable singing it, mostly. Yeah. So nobody's going to balk at the tempo. Oh, I want it faster so I can play a faster solo. Probably not going to happen, So he would always ask opinions and take input from guys. But, of course, obviously, he'd have the final say in whether something went on or not that stuck to the tape, that kind of thing. So for me, it was a fantastic learning experience to be in his studio using his old Martins, those 00045s that had Merle Haggard in the neck.
Oh, my goodness.
Play those things to make records with. It's like, wow. I wish my dad could see that.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It's just so cool. But those guitars sounded great. Obviously, magic sounding things from the other records. I wasn't probably doing it any justice, but I was sure trying, And so I got to do that and, figure out, and I'd learned a bunch of the rhythm things from doing demos and stuff here for quite a while and watching rhythm players and see how they did stuff. And, if one guy did everything, I'd see one time he would, paintbrush and doing his, and the other guy. So, and learn how to do that. And so when I got, with him, I had already learned some of those kind of things. And then listening more intently to the rhythm tracks of the old stuff, I would hear what Glenn Campbell did and Bobby Wayne, those other rhythm guys in the band on the records. And I would say, some of those little things they would do, I would try and sneak some of that and incorporate some of that into the newer things that we were doing, more out of tipping the hat and giving it that flavor that those guys made that stuff so great with. Yeah. So it was a wonderful learning experience, and he was always praising guys and never mean in like wasn't a prick producer or none of that kind of stuff at all. Just totally nothing but good to say.
Wow.
Awesome gig.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you probably ran into James Burton or Reggie Young or some of the other, some of the guitar players that played on there. And, and did they come out to shows or anything like that? And you had to play in front of
James
them?
came out a bunch of times. Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Reggie came out one time. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was just to meet those guys. I probably broke their hand just going, oh, that's Reggie Young. Oh, James Burton.
Yeah.
Just being a guitar gomer, I can't help it, It's like all of us. We're all nerds about guitars, and that's why we're here.
Yeah. So in 2000, on April Fool's Day, you moved to Austin.
Yeah.
So, what caused you to move to Austin from Nashville?
I'd say Nashville caused me to move to Austin. Because just the downtown scene had changed so much, and the playing thing and the music and just the kind of music that was on the radio, all of that. And I thought, well, when Merle hangs it up, I'll still be here. And I kind of don't want to be now anymore. Yeah. Because of all of that. And, all the records had distorted guitars and none of that kind of what I like kind of playing on it. So I thought, I'm not going to have a snowball's chance in hell of getting in on any of that because it's a young rock guy's thing. And I don't even think like that or want to or any of that. So I might as well move while I still have a good job. I'm making money and go to somewhere that, I might like better. And I'd been in Austin a lot and recorded there with Dale Watson, some different people, and Sleep at the Wheel and things like that. And so I thought, well, if and when the Merle thing folds up for me, whether he fires me or he retires or whatever, if I can move now, then when that happens, I'll already be there. And if I didn't have that job. I couldn't afford to leave town playing on Broadway.
Yeah.
Couldn't go do anything or afford it, So I moved while I still had that job. So while I moved there, then I could still fly out and do the gigs the same old way, or the bus coming through and all of that. And I thought, well, I want to go to Texas because that's a lot of Western swing and old traditional country still there. And I thought, well, when real country music takes its last dying breath, it'll probably be in Texas. So I'd like to be there, not for that, but until then,
Yeah.
I think it stands a better chance. Where here, it's already died as far as the old stuff that I like, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so that's why I moved there.
Yeah.
And
It's
no
hard to
offense,
find, too.
but
Yeah.
that's progress, and I'm getting old, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
no biggie,
Yeah. Then you ended up kind of getting pulled back into some things because of Brad Paisley. So Brad Paisley, and that's where we met.
Right.
So I think he had seen you play a number of times, and then I guess I met you when you played at Brad's wedding reception.
Right. Yeah. He used to come into Roberts.
Yeah.
When he was doing his radio tours, I guess, before he kind of got going big,
Yeah.
But he used to come into Roberts, and he'd sit there quiet as a mouse and just sit and stare, and he'd walk by on the way out the door and look at the pedal board, picture with the camera, with the phone. And
Yeah.
and he'd, what's that pedal there? What's that do? Kind of guitars nerd.
Yeah.
So then after I'd moved to Austin, he'd come through town a few times on some radio things where he'd be doing acoustic, just pushing new stuff, and he'd come a couple times with his band, and they'd come to one of the clubs I was playing at if they had a show that ended early or whatever, and then I'd be playing late, of course, and they'd come by and hang out, and and we got talking, and of course we hit it off right away. Pickups, guitars, nerd stuff, So 68 Paisley, and that guitar came from San Antonio. A steel player owned it, a guitar player, steel player, and all of that stuff. So we just guitar magnet for each other. So we were best friends right away. Yeah. And then he'd come to town, and then, of course, his, at that time, girlfriend would be filming something in Austin, and he'd call and say, hey, where are you playing Tuesday night? And I'd say, Tuesday I'm down at Eagles. We start at 10 o'clock. Do you have extra guitar and amp? Yeah. Why, you coming to town? Yeah, but my wife's filming, so I'm bumming off of her. I'm getting the ride off of her, so I can't bring anything with me.
Yeah.
So I'm just showing up and hanging out. Oh, yeah, come on. So he'd come and show up, and I'd bring an extra amp and a guitar, Telecaster, and he'd come sit in all night with our band, and, just that kind of stuff, and had fun. And so then when he got married, he says, hey, you want to play my wedding?
Yeah.
Of course. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll jam some more.
Yeah. And you played on, Spaghetti Western Swing, which was Grammy nominated.
Yeah, nominated.
But then, then he had you play on Cluster Pluck.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really neat thing that he did, where he was able to kind of honor his heroes.
Right.
And you were, right there with James Burton and Albert Lee and John Jorgensen and Brent Mason and Vince
all
Gill
the best guys. I don't know why he put me in there.
Well, you deserve to be there.
A little salt, I guess.
Yeah. But that was, and that did win a Grammy.
Yeah, it did win one. Yeah, well, not many guys on it, I guess.
Yeah. I guess.
So, that was my first Grammy Award.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And he mentioned my name in his book.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Not
so
too
I quit
shabby.
playing now.
Yeah. You're done now. So, you've continued to play in Austin, and you play, I mean, at least, almost every day, at least 5 times a week.
Now I probably play. The last 5 or 6 years, I've kind of cut back, and I'm playing 3 or 4 nights a week. But for 15 years at least, or 16, I played 7 nights a week, all the time. I would do afternoon gigs, doubles on Saturdays and Sundays, because I just have been that kind of. I did that here. I play 3 times a day here, playing clubs before I had my Merle gig, because they're our only way of making money, and play on little sessions and demo things that. I mean, I played for as little as $5 a song, doing demo stuff here. I know probably the union, I hate to hear that, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. It's what it was back then. It was, we play on that kind of a thing. But if we did 20 songs in a full 10-hour day, adds up,
Yeah.
So, I just been a workhorse kind of guy, and I love playing. And if I could play in 5 bands a day, I'll do it. I've done that my whole life, and that's what I wanted to do and always loved to do. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
To some guys, that's like, that's way too much work and too many hours and not enough money. It's like, well, it's not about money. It's about learning to be a good player and learning from you and learning from that guy. And, oh, there's a new different steel player tonight. Oh, great. I'm going to learn something.
Yeah.
I've been that kind of guy my whole life. So it's always been really fun to meet new players. And, you run into some guys that are not good people or whatever, and you learn to deal with that. You just, it's write that night off. That's okay. No, it'll be better tomorrow.
Yeah. Austin, of course, is known for, besides Nashville, is another guitar town.
Totally.
Yeah. So who are some of your favorite guys that you've gotten to play with in Austin?
Lots of them. I've been playing at the Continental Club for 19 years with my own band on Saturday afternoons, doing my own thing, which is, old country music, but lots of guitar geek instrumental stuff too of my own. And then I play Sunday nights the same 19 years with a band called Hay Bale, and it's kind of a traditional old school country band. And we got Earl Ball, Johnny Cash's old piano player for 25 years. And Kevin Smith is Willie Nelson's bass player now, but he was in a band called High Noon for a long time, rockabilly upright player, real good player. Tom Lewis, the drummer. And we have Dallas Wayne as our lead singer for the last 6 years. And he's like a big chief on the XM radio country channels, Willie's Roadhouse and Outlaw Country. So he's one of our singers, and myself and Dallas and Earl do all the singing in that band. So that band both those bands been there that long. Somebody comes through eventually, hanging out and gets up and plays. And, I mean, we had everybody. Chrissy Hines got up and jammed with us, and James Burton, Billy Gibbons, Harry Dean Stanton sang with us. It's been awesome. Brad came and played. Eric Johnson, he's played with me lots. I played with him. It's been awesome that way, and there's so many great players there. Jimmy Vaughn, and Eric, and Rick McRae, who plays with George Strait's amazing guitar player. There's a piles of guys there, maybe that you hadn't heard of. You probably would have, but a lot of folks hadn't heard of that are just great players, the same as there are here, that you don't see. They're not on record on the back of a CD jacket, so a lot of folks wouldn't know who they are, But there's a lot of good playing there.
Yeah. Put out a number of great, solo records through the years, Telewacker and No Stranger to a Tele and Redhead and a couple other, records that I'm assuming those are all available on your website that people can check out. Those are, great playing and singing on them. You also have a True Fire, lesson that came out, recently that people can
I have
get
one
on
that came out and a new one, second one that's coming out here in, I want to say it comes out in December.
Wow.
So, and it's a play along with me kind of a thing, I'm playing a rhythm and bass and on this track and with the drummer, and I play some stuff and show how to do it, and then there's you can cut me out and play along with the track or split it up and split the solos and all of that on this True Fire thing, which is an excellent guitar nerd program. They got a pile of guys on there, so if you sign up, you have access to literally over 100 different players. And pick a name. Tommy Emmanuel's on there, even.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Talk about practice. We all need it now. He's here.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk gear. Of course, you're known as a Tele guy. So tell us about the guitar that you have with us today.
This guitar is one of my travel guitars. I don't like taking out my really old Teles and stuff anymore. This one is made in California by a fellow named Doc Fisher. And I think it's even Doc Fisher guitars or Fisher guitars.
Okay.
And the flame in the neck is crazy.
It's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's a one-piece ash body, pretty lightweight. And it's got a Glendale bridge, Glendale knobs. It's a real heavy knurling, which I like. The stick when you're sweating, they dig in real good so you don't miss it. The pickups in this guitar are made by a fellow named Owen Duffy, and he has ocduff.pickups.com, I think it is. And he makes fantastic stuff. This neck pickup has a nickel silver alloy cover instead of a brass one that's chrome plated. Mm-hmm. So it's a different, janglier, more... Yeah.
A little more clarity to it.
Yeah. So I love his pickups, and the bridge saddles are kind of goofy. They're Kohler saddles. They're made in Las Vegas, and I don't know if he's going anymore or not. And these are copper. He was making copper, aluminum, steel, and brass. And the edges of the saddles touch. So they're actually a little bit wider than everything else that's made out there, which means your strings don't ride over top of the set screws, which we run into a lot on some guitars. And so OC Duff pickups, Kohler saddles, Glendale knobs, maple, ash, about it. It's a good hammer.
Yeah.
Fantastic guitar. And I've got several guitars, and I've always been a nerd for changing parts and pickups. And I got one of my first guitars is a 58 Esquire, and I cut a big old hole in it with a hammer and a screwdriver and put a Charlie Christian lap steel pickup in it when I was a kid, and figured I want to sound like a Gibson guy, that I could get that sound and mix the two and not have to buy a Les Paul, because I couldn't afford it, but get a Les Paul sound and a Telecaster sound. So I did that when I was 14. So a long time ago. So I've been a nerd guy for parts and playing with guitars and building them from scratch. I made some horrible ones. I made some pretty good ones, and bought all kinds of parts. Been in the vintage thing forever, and I just eat up with it. I'm sick.
So, as someone who's owned a ton of vintage Teles and who's owned Blackguards, owned all the different eras of Telecasters, and you've built a bunch of them, what are things that you look for in a guitar? Like if you're going to build one or you're going to buy one, what are some key things that you've learned from years and years of playing Teles?
Well, everybody's different, as far as what things that they like. Fat girls and skinny girls, it kind of comes down to that kind of thing. There's something for everybody that way. So for me, my choice is a big neck with a lightweight body. To me, not everybody else, rings better. Some guys think a heavier weight body has more sustain. Maybe so, but it's not the sound I like or the weight I like.
Yeah.
So for me, maybe I'm more of a mid-rangey kind of guy. So I like a big neck and a lightweight body. I love these nickel covers because they're more sibilant and more, to me, the neck pickup sounds more like a DeArmond Dynasonic on a 50s Gretsch, as opposed to the dark, muddy 50s neck pickup Tele sound. Mm-hmm. So in that way. So that, and I am a big fan of brass saddles and always have been. And I've had, back when the 6 saddles came out, I bought into all of that. And it didn't last very long, and I went all back to the old 3 saddles, because to me, I think that two strings on one saddle is a certain kind of sound, whether it's sympathetic one to the other or not. I don't know, but to me, it is. Where the single saddles, you can intonate better, but the guitar has a different sound.
Yeah, there seems to be something to the case of there being two strings on one saddle, and the fact that it's getting more forced vibration or resonance or so. I don't know what it is, or the downward pressure, something.
It's a different sound.
It's a different sound. Yeah. And so if you put one of those 6 saddle bridges on it, it sounds completely different.
Yeah, it's a different, like it or
bad.
not. I mean, some guys love it. I mean, everybody that buys an American Standard loves them.
Yeah.
Because they have 6 saddles, they can get perfectly in tune.
Yeah.
Before these compensateds, we were taking a needle nose pliers and bending the screw until it was compensated, which was fine too, because once you got it right, you'd never change it.
Right.
Unless you drastically went from 8s to 13s, you might have to change it. But if you went from 10s to 11, you wouldn't have to change the bridge once you had it set.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the 3 saddle bridge. I like what they call the modern wiring, where the switch is neck, both, and bridge, and the tone works on everything, and so does the volume.
Yeah.
So I'm like that. I don't care for the old ones that have the mud setting, neck pickup, and bridge, because you have to fiddle with it like the old Strat and get it in the middle.
Yeah.
To get the middle sound,
and in some cases, those pickups are out of phase with each other.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. I've run into one or two that when you carefully balanced it, it was all of a sudden you hear doink doink doink.
Yeah, of the old ones. Yeah, you got the Steve Cropper sound.
Yeah, yeah,
which is cool. For that, it's awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned strings. That made me think. What gauge of strings do you use?
I'm using Ernie Ball 11 to 50.
All right.
And I've used for years and years. I used 13s back in the jam days at the Stagecoach, and I ended up switching to 11s because nobody would play my guitar.
Yeah.
Said, "Oh, it plays like a dobro, and the strings are too heavy and the accent's too high." So it's like, I don't want to sit in. It's like, I'll never get a break.
Right.
That was my goal. We need to take a break on Monday nights. So
Yeah.
I went down to 11s, and I was like, oh, these are still stiff, because most guys use 9s and maybe 10s, some 8s.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't do that, because to me the sound is so thin and so flappy. And because I play so hard like a farmer, I just plow. So light strings don't sound as good, where if they're heavier, it's more like playing an acoustic guitar. Doing, rings better.
Right.
I don't think the bass strings last as long, fresh string, ringy wise, when they're big and fat. I don't know if they fill up with dirt quicker or what, but they don't seem to ring as long as a lighter gauge set, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So is this a regular gauge that or do you buy singles or is it?
No, it's a regular. They make them. They make a
50?
11 to 48 is their common one, and then I think they make a 11 to 52 as well.
Okay. And your pick, I saw that you got one of those blue chip picks on there.
I'm a blue chip guy, big time now. I am hardcore. It's just, I'm a nut about that kind of stuff, and I think picks sound totally different.
They do.
The nylon Jim Dunlops, to me, they sound dead. The old celluloid from the 60s, if you can find them, they sound really good. But you can't find them anywhere, and you can't they may lie and say they make them here, but they can't make them. You can't buy that material here. You can only get it in Italy. Mm-hmm. So if you can get picks made in Italy, you can get the original stuff. But they can't have it here because it's too flammable. Like the nitrate pick guards on the old stuff. Same reason. They go up, combust,
Yeah. So what model pick is that?
Yeah, I don't know. This one's got holes in it. Let me get the other one.
You said you got that one from Carter Vintage, but you got another one directly from...
Yeah, from them, and that's a TAD 45.
All right. I guess that'll... if somebody wants to check one out, they can look that up. And
it's pretty thick.
Yeah.
And I got the Canadian model. It's got 3 picks all in one, so you don't have to wear one tip out and throw it away. It's being a cheap Canadian, I opted for that. I thought 3 picks in one, that'll last me forever. So I love them. I think they're great. And then Carter's ordered some from them, and they had these holes drilled in them.
Yeah.
Which, when you're sweating, man, it's like killer grip.
Yeah.
So, and the sound, I just love the sound of them.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so you're just using our deluxe reverb today, but you use are you using a Grammatico amp now?
Yeah, I've been a Grammatico amp guy for probably over 10 years now. Before that, I was a twin reverb with JBL's guy for a long time.
And you went through this PV LTD phase also.
Yeah, our hay bale band got so loud at one point that the twin was distorting on 6.
That's loud.
Oh, it's like bleeding loud.
Yeah.
So I thought, man, this is just not fun when it's that dirty to me.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I used to use it LTD when they first come out with the JBL. Mm-hmm. So I went on a mission. I found some of those, and I wound up using it and going, man, it's kind of hard and sterile. But with the JBL, it's a bit sweeter and a bit warmer.
Yeah.
I'll just try harder. And I wound up getting really used to them. So I used them for probably 6-7 years. About 3 or 4 of them as I found them, and because they quit making them, the LTD 400, they quit making that, I think, in 78 or 9, and then nothing for a couple of years, and then they came out with the Nashville 400, which had a built-in compressor.
Yes, it's bad.
Yeah, and the mid-range sweep stuff,
it's rough.
all it can do is get nasalier with that, so those are out for me. But so I wound up with the LTDs, and I was happy with those. And then I met this fellow, John Grammatico, who'd moved to Austin and was starting to build amps, and run into him at a music store, and a young fellow working the store said, "Oh, you got to meet this guy. He makes great stuff." And he had a 410, 40-watt basement type thing that he calls a Kingsville. And great sounding amp, really tight bottom end, real clean, but 40 watts. I was like, nah, I'm used to my 200-watt Mississippi Marshall that I'm using that's loud as a PA and clean as a bell. So I can make something like that. And I'm like, nah, I doubt it, No offense, but there ain't a twin on the planet that's as clean as that amp. They sound better, the tone's better, but this thing is so clean and kind of sterile, but I'm okay with it now. I'm at that point of I like that sound. I'm used to it. So we tried for probably 3 years changing everything, and he's just a fanatic about sound that I would spend 10, 12 hours once a week, twice a week during the day, go to his house, and I'd sit there with a guitar. He did all the work. I just was his guinea pig. So I'd play something, and he'd say, play something. So I'd play a lick, and he'd say, okay, and he'd take this one part and unsolder it, flip it around. How's it sound now? Not as good. Put her back. Do that through everything. Get the direction right, so it sounded just right of all the bits in there. And then you go, okay, these are metal film. Let's take these out and let's try polypropylene resistors. Okay. So we do that. Another couple months would go by. Same direction, finding the right ones, because they're not, even though they're marked, they have a plus sign on one end. Not always that they're that's right, So we did that, and then go, okay, now I just got these new carbon composite that what they use in old hi-fi stuff. Let's try those. Ooh, fatter, warmer. Okay, let's put those in the preamp section. But when we get to the power, we want a harder, cleaner to reproduce that warmer, fat sound. So we'll try the metal film here. And all these different, to me, is Greek,
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there with a guitar going, okay, yeah. But my input is, yeah, it sounds better, or I like it, or I don't, or that kind of. So we went through that for probably 3 years worth of jacking around, starting out with a twin chassis with 4 606s. We went to the 6 CA7s, or whatever, EL 34s.
Type. Yeah.
We went that way, and then we went 212s, four tens, a 15, a 12, and a 10. Tried every combination. We tried all kinds of speakers, all the different Jensens and Neos and all that stuff out there. Wound up with the old JBLs. So after about 3 years of jacking around with all these different speakers and resistors and things like that, I wound up with, to me, the best sounding amp I've ever had in my life. It's just unbelievable. Better and great, and really matched. It's only 80 watts, but for some reason, it's as loud as an LTD somehow. I don't know what all he did.
Yeah.
He's a wizard.
And you've got an old JBL in it.
I've got two 12-inch D120s.
Okay.
That I had reconed. Austin Speaker Works reconed them for me and put base paper, which is the thicker, heavier paper, with a paper surround.
Okay.
So it's a little bit tighter, definitely, than the looser, D120. So same chrome covers and everything like that. And man, it's just, like I say, it's the best amp I've ever had, and it sounds fantastic. And but that said, it weighs about 90 pounds, so I can't be flying it to gigs because that's a $200 bill one way, something like that. So he makes several models. He makes this Kingsville, the 410 40 water, and everybody's got. Jimmy Vaughn probably has 10 of them.
Yeah.
And Buddy Guy's got one. Steve Miller's got one. Billy Gibbons has got a couple. All the blues guys are just flipping over his 410. And so he started making a 212 that he calls a DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth twin. And it's a 212. And he makes a low power, I think, and a high power. And then he makes a little small single 12 called a Lagrange, which sounds like.
Yeah.
And so I had him make me one of those. And a bit too dirty for my wanting. So I put a JBL in it, and he's beefing it up, and it's in the middle of getting jacked up a little bit cleaner for me. And that would be my flying travel amp, a single 12. And I don't know what the watts is going to be on it yet, but I have faith in him. He does amazing work. Oh. So that's my main amp. And then on this trip here, I have a little Showbud. They made, back in the late 60s, they made a single 12 practice amp for a bunch of, must have been Emmons and Lloyd Green and all the Opry guys, single 12 that were like 20 watts. So I found one that was blown up. And I took it to a buddy of mine that's an amazing amp guy, too, that's more transistor. So he took this little Showbud, and it's a single 12 E120, but he made it 100 watts. Mm-hmm. But he kept the Showbud tone stack, or the tone guts of it, beefed up the power, and put in a digital reverb inside of it. Huh. And it is, for a transistor, it's the sweetest little amp. This buddy of mine, Ray Ewell, makes amps in Austin as well. And for a transistor amp, it's like, wow, really good amp. And it's light, so I fly it with me, at least until I get my new little Lagrange done. Yeah. But so that's it for amps. Really. I still have some old ones, Black Super and an old Brown Concert and a Tweed Harvard. And I don't use them, but I have them. I still have them, and I love them. They're cool, and they're paid for. Yeah. So that's all good. That's it for amps, really, Yeah.
And then pedal-wise, I know, you're sporting Durham Electronics. I know you use like the Mucho Busto, and they make a red Verb. And, and you've used some other stuff. Usually you have one of those old Boss DM3 analog delays, and you might have some other. That's what I love, because I like
the distortion that it gives.
Yeah.
So I'm not much of a pedal guy, and I did, when I moved to Austin, I think I had a Tube Screamer. Actually, I sold it here before I left because the guy said, "Hey, I'll give you $200 for that green box."
Yeah.
I said, "It's yours."
It's yours.
And it was the old one, the 808 with a little square button.
Yeah.
Now they're big money, I guess. But it was like, I use it 3 times a night. Yeah, I'll take $200 for it,
Yeah. You can replace it with something
totally.
else.
So I bought a Blues Driver, and I had that old Red Echo and a Boss compressor when I moved to Austin. Yeah. Then I met Alan Durham, and what sold me on him is that he wasn't a pushy guy. He came and said, "Hey, have you ever tried like a thing called a clean boost? And I said, no. He said, well, that's what you're doing with your compressor. The volume's up and the compression's off.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm used to this. Oh, okay. About a month later, he comes back. He says, you still liking that? Yeah, yeah. He said, well, I make one that's kind of like that. I think you might like it. Oh, cool. I didn't say any more. Come back a couple weeks later. As time went on, he wore me down, I guess.
Yeah.
He says, if you want, I'll leave one with you. You can give it a try and see if you like it.
Yeah.
And I said, sure, I'll try it.
Yeah.
He said, okay, so you take this one out and put this one in its place. But he said, don't take it out for a week.
Yeah.
He said, play it for a week and leave it on and set it there and see what you think. Because I didn't know how to set nothing or...
Yeah.
So he said, here, put it here and this and that. Okay. Played it for a week. He said, and then he said, after that, he said, then hit the switch and shut it off and see what you think.
Yeah.
I was like, it sounded like I got dead flat wounds
Yeah.
with a blanket over my amp. It just didn't have any luster to it without it. It was like, so I put my I thought, he's selling me snake oil. So I put my old Boss one back in. Same thing. It was just louder.
Yeah.
But it still sounded kind of flat and lackluster. And it was a thing he calls the sex drive that him and Charlie Sexton designed together. And so that was my first pedal from him.
Yeah.
Then he left me alone for about a year. Then he says, you like that blues driver pretty well? So he's coming to see me lots. We're hanging out.
And so he kept working on you. And then he had you using the Mucho Busto. And then
snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
But a great guy. Turns out he's my best friend 20 years later. We're best buddies and just awesome guy and does incredible work. So anyway, I wind up changing out the blues driver for the Mucho Busto. So I had those for probably 5 years. And then he's making other stuff and doing that. And he makes this Neil Young pedal called a Crazy Horse it sounds like the worst amp you've ever heard in your life to me. But apparently that's the Neil Young sound.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you need filter caps real bad. So he says, hey, you want to try one of these? So I got it, and I was like, oh, that's horrible. Take it away. I'll never use that,
Yeah.
So then he makes this thing called a Zia drive. It's like the Mucho Busto without any compression. So it's more Marshall kink, kink kind of sound.
Yeah.
Great for like rock rhythm, bluesy rhythm, or just a little hair on it, without being full-blown Gary Moore distortion kind of thing,
Yeah.
So I got one of those, and the Sex Drive, he ended up making me a Red Verb, which is a digital reverb, and it has a Sex Drive clean boost in it with a buffer. So it's all clean and juicy and all that. And I mean, it's still a digital reverb, so you still get that at the end if the band's not playing. But when the band's playing, I think it sounds fat, and for a digital one, it sounds really good and fat. And I'm happy with those. And I still have my old Red Echo that I love.
Yeah.
And I just got a little pedal board in one of those old Carlo sound Anvil briefcases.
Yeah.
So that's a good little road case,
It goes where you need to go.
Yeah.
Well, Red, I really appreciate you coming down. I know you're in town to play a show with Robbie Folks and Linda Gale Lewis. You're playing at the Station Inn tonight. And thank you for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
It was a real
My
pleasure.
Oh, thank
you, Red.
My pleasure.